Power does not announce itself. It arrives before words, before movement, before intention is even clear. Most people believe dominance is something you do. How you speak, how you assert, how you present confidence. That belief is why they never develop real presence. True presence is not noticed the way performance is noticed. It is felt, instinctively, immediately, on a level beneath logic. People sense it before they have language for it, and by the time they do, the hierarchy is already set. This is why the loudest person in the room rarely holds the most power. Loud confidence is often a compensation mechanism. It is a movement designed to cover instability. Talking too much, asserting too quickly, filling silence. These behaviors are not strength. They are signals of internal agitation. And the human nervous system is highly trained to detect agitation, even when the mind tries to ignore it. Presence begins where performance ends. Before anyone hears what you say, their nervous system is already reading yours. This is biology, not psychology. Humans evolved to scan threat, stability, dominance, and safety long before language existed. Tone, posture, breathing rhythm, eye movement, stillness. These cues are processed automatically. You do not choose to notice them. Your body does it for you. And once your body decides who feels grounded and who feels reactive, your behavior adjusts accordingly. This is why presence operates beneath conscious awareness. People don't decide to respect quiet individuals. Respect emerges as a reflex. The room shifts slightly when they enter. Conversations soften. Movement slows. Others become more aware of themselves, how they're speaking, how they're behaving, how much space they're taking. Not because the quiet person demanded it, but because their internal stillness recalibrated the environment. Quiet people trigger attention without effort because they do not leak energy. Most people leak constantly. They broadcast emotion, intention, insecurity, and urgency through micro-behaviors they don't even know they're performing. They rush to fill the silence. They over-explain. They adjust themselves to be liked. Each adjustment tells the nervous systems around them one thing. This person is externally regulated, and externally regulated people are easy to read, easy to move, and easy to test. Presence is the opposite state. Presence is when nothing spills outward, when emotion is contained, not suppressed, when movement is deliberate, not compulsive, when silence feels comfortable rather than threatening. This containment creates gravity. Others begin orienting around you because you are not orienting around them. The human brain is drawn to stability the way a compass is drawn to the north, not because it's impressive, but because it's rare. Before we go deeper into how presence sets hierarchy before words, tap like and hit subscribe, because what comes next reveals why real power isn't performed. It's detected, and the room adjusts before you speak. And this is where most people misunderstand quiet power. They confuse quietness with passivity. They assume silence means uncertainty, fear, or lack of confidence. That assumption only holds when silence is paired with nervous tension. But when silence is paired with relaxed stillness, slow breath, steady posture, unhurried presence, it communicates the opposite. It communicates control. And control is felt long before it is interpreted. This is why presence is detected before it is understood. You don't need to speak for people to feel when you are not seeking approval. You don't need to assert for people to sense when you are not competing. The absence of striving is itself a signal. It tells the room, this person is not reacting to the environment is reacting to them. That is the biological foundation of dominance. Quiet people dominate not because they withdraw, but because they are embodied. They are fully inside themselves. Their attention is not scattered outward, scanning for validation or cues on how to behave. And because they are internally anchored, others feel slightly unanchored around them. Not threatened, but aware, more careful, more measured, and more conscious. This is also why performance-based confidence fails over time. Performance requires energy. It requires upkeep. It requires constant signaling. Presence requires none of that. Presence is efficient. It is sustainable. And it compounds. The longer someone remains grounded without explanation, without display, without emotional leakage, the more others adjust around them. The hierarchy stabilizes quietly, without confrontation. This is the identity shift most people never make. They try to act powerful instead of becoming grounded. They focus on expression instead of embodiment. They confuse being seen with being felt. And as long as they do, presence will remain out of reach. This is where your identity activation begins. You are not here to be expressive. You are not here to perform confidence. You are not here to fill space. You are here to become embodied. Because the moment you stop trying to signal power, the moment your nervous system settles, the moment your presence becomes still instead of loud, power begins to move toward you on its own. Not because people understand you, but because they feel you. Power is detected before it is understood. Silence is not empty. It is unresolved. And the human brain is wired to move toward whatever feels unresolved. Most people misunderstand why quiet individuals draw attention. They assume it's mystery, aloofness, or intimidation. In reality, it's neurological. The brain is a prediction machine. It constantly scans for patterns, cues, and signals so it can anticipate what happens next. When those signals are missing, when someone does not immediately explain themselves, react, or fill the space, the brain cannot complete its prediction loop. That incompleteness creates focus. Unresolved signals pull attention automatically. This is why silence feels heavier than words. Words close loops. Silence opens them. When someone speaks, the mind categorizes, labels, and moves on. When someone remains quiet, the mind stays engaged. It scans posture, tone, micro-movements, breathing, and timing. It tries to read. And the harder it tries, the more attention it gives. This is where psychological gravity is born. Silence disrupts social rhythm. Most interactions follow an unconscious tempo. Speak, respond, explain, reassure, react. This rhythm keeps everyone regulated and comfortable. When one person steps outside that rhythm by not reacting on cue, the entire interaction destabilizes slightly. Not dramatically, subtly. And subtle destabilization is far more powerful than overt disruption. When the rhythm breaks, people begin adjusting themselves. They speak a little more carefully. They over-explain. They fill gaps that weren't theirs to fill. They check their tone. They wonder how they're being perceived. Quiet presence forces others into self-monitoring mode. This is why talkers reveal themselves around silent individuals. It's not because the silent person is intimidating. It's because silence removes external regulation. Without feedback, people turn inward to regulate their own discomfort. And in doing so, they leak information, motivations, insecurities, urgency, intent. Silence doesn't extract information. It invites it. This is also why weak people talk more around quiet people. Talking becomes a stabilizer, a way to regain control, a way to fill the uncertainty created by someone who is not reacting as expected. The more grounded the silence, the more others feel the urge to compensate. They don't even realize they're doing it. They just feel slightly off balance. and speech becomes their anchor. This is the difference between being ignored and being felt. Being ignored is absent. Being felt is presence without display. Ignored people disappear from awareness. Silent people with presence do the opposite. They become the reference point. The room subtly orients around them. Conversations pause when they move. Others wait for their reaction, not because it's demanded, but because it feels consequential. What doesn't seek attention often controls it. This is the law most people violate without knowing it. They chase attention by speaking, explaining, reacting, and performing. And the more they chase, the less gravity they have. Attention follows containment, not pursuit. It follows stillness, not motion. It follows the person who is not trying to manage perception. Silence works because it transfers effort. Instead of you working to be understood, others work to understand you. Instead of you managing the interaction, others adjust themselves within it. Instead of you signaling value, value is assumed, because the mind rarely assigns importance to what is frantic or overeager. This is also why silence feels uncomfortable to practice at first. When you stop filling space, your nervous system initially panics. It wants resolution. It wants reassurance. It wants to explain. That urge is not intuition. It is conditioning. You were trained to believe that silence equals awkwardness, weakness, or disengagement. In reality, silence is a container, and containers create form. Silence does not dominate by force. It is dominated by gravity, and gravity does not need to announce itself. It simply pulls. Once you understand this, you stop trying to be interesting. You stop trying to be impressive. You stop trying to manage how you are perceived. You let stillness do the work. And the paradox reveals itself. The less you seek attention, the more attention organizes itself around you. That is the quiet advantage. What doesn't seek attention often controls it. Hierarchy is not decided by volume, status, or words. It is decided by nervous systems. Long before people rank each other consciously, their bodies are already doing it. Calmness is read as capacity. Reactivity is read as instability. And instability, no matter how articulate or confident it sounds, is never trusted with authority. This is why emotional stillness signals power before logic ever enters the picture. The calmest nervous system sets the hierarchy. Most people believe dominance comes from assertion. In reality, assertion is often a compensation for inner movement. When someone is emotionally stirred, their body accelerates. Breathing becomes shallow. Movements sharpen. Speech speeds up. These are not moral flaws. They are biological signals. And other nervous systems read them instantly as pressure. Pressure does not lead. Stability does. Emotional stillness stabilizes the room because it provides a reference point. When one person is internally regulated, others unconsciously regulate themselves in relation to that person. Voices soften, gestures slow, interruptions decrease. Not because rules were enforced, but because the environment recalibrated around the most grounded presence. This is why reactive people orbit unreactive ones. Reactors seek anchors. They move toward whoever feels solid enough to absorb emotional energy without returning it. You see this everywhere, in meetings, families, relationships, public spaces. The person who reacts least becomes the emotional center of gravity. Others orient around them because calmness feels safe, even when it feels unsettling. This does not mean emotional detachment. If this is changing how you see silence, nervous system authority, and social gravity, tap like and hit subscribe. Your support matters, because it helps this message reach people who are ready to stop trying to look powerful and start becoming the reference point. Also, there is a critical difference between quiet presence and emotional withdrawal. Detachment is absence. Stillness is containment. Detached people disconnect. Still people remain fully present, but unmoved. They feel emotion without exporting it. They register tension without amplifying it. This is why their calm feels alive, not cold. Quiet presence is not numbness. It is discipline, and discipline changes social rank. When you remain composed while others escalate, something irreversible happens. The interaction reorders itself. The person escalating begins to look smaller, not because they are wrong, but because they are moving. Movement signals reactivity. Stillness signals control. And control, at a nervous system level, is authority. This is why arguments lose power around composed individuals. Emotional hooks fail. Provocations fall flat. Attempts to rush, guilt, or intimidate lose traction. Not because the calm person resists, but because there is nothing to push against. Pressure requires movement to work. When there is none, it collapses. Hierarchy forms quietly in that collapse. You do not need to claim authority for this to happen. In fact, claiming it weakens the effect. Authority emerges when others feel that you are not being pulled by the interaction. When your internal state remains unchanged, regardless of external input, the mind assigns you a higher position automatically. This is the transition point. You move from participant to center. Participants react to the environment. Centers shape it. Participants mirror energy. Centers absorb it. Participants explain themselves. Centers let others adjust. This shift is not dramatic. It is subtle. But subtle shifts are the ones that last. Over time, people begin deferring without realizing why. They hesitate before interrupting you. They check themselves before escalating. They wait. And waiting is a form of recognition. Emotional stillness is not passive. It is active restraint. It requires awareness, not suppression. Suppression creates tension. Tension leaks. Stillness releases tension while maintaining control. That is why it feels grounded rather than rigid. And grounded energy is magnetic. It doesn't chase respect. It reorganizes behavior until respect becomes the default. This is the hierarchy most people never see forming. They think dominance is negotiated verbally. It is not. It is negotiated emotionally. The moment one nervous system proves it cannot be rushed, provoked, or pulled off center, the negotiation ends. The hierarchy locks in. This is the identity transition you are making. You are no longer here to compete emotionally. You are no longer here to escalate. You are no longer here to match energy. You are becoming the reference point others adapt to. Because when your internal state remains steady, the world begins adjusting around you. Not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. The calmest nervous system sets the hierarchy. People do not test strength, they test access. This is where most misunderstand disrespect. They assume they are being tested because others are confident, aggressive, or dominant. In reality, testing happens when people sense emotional availability. Expressive personalities leak access constantly through tone, reactions, explanations, and visible emotional shifts. Each leak answers an unconscious question in the other person's mind. Can I move you? If the answer appears to be yes, testing begins. This is why expressive people are challenged more often than quiet ones. Not because they are weaker, but because they are readable. Readability creates leverage. When someone can predict how you'll respond emotionally, they gain room to push, probe, and pressure. They don't even need malicious intent. The nervous system does this automatically. It explores boundaries wherever access is detected. Unreadability removes leverage completely. Quiet presence does not give people nothing. It gives them no handle. There is no emotional edge to grab, no predictable reaction to provoke, no rhythm to interrupt. When someone cannot anticipate your internal movement, they lose the ability to test safely. Testing requires feedback. Without feedback, the risk rises. This is why manipulators struggle around quiet individuals. Manipulation depends on emotional entry points: guilt, urgency, fear, sympathy, flattery. These tools only work when emotions are visible and responsive. A quiet presence absorbs the attempt without confirming it. No reassurance, no resistance, no counterattack, just calm containment. The manipulator is left uncertain whether the tactic worked, failed, or was even noticed. Uncertainty destabilizes manipulation. Around quiet people, manipulators either retreat, overexpose themselves, or escalate prematurely. All three outcomes remove their advantage. Silence forces intent to surface. When tactics stop producing reaction, they must be revealed or abandoned. This is why emotionally disciplined individuals seem difficult to manipulate, not because they confront manipulation, but because they make it inefficient. Silence here is not withdrawal. This distinction is critical. Withdrawal is disengagement. It creates distance without presence. Silence as a boundary is different. It is full engagement without emotional leakage. The quiet individual is present, aware, listening, but not yielding internal control. This form of silence communicates something very specific at a nervous system level. You cannot rush me, you cannot steer me, and you cannot pressure me into movement. That message is felt, not heard. This is how dominance forms without confrontation. There is no argument, no assertion, no escalation, just the repeated experience that attempts to challenge do not land. Over time, the other person stops trying, not out of fear, but out of inefficiency. The cost-benefit calculation changes. Testing no longer produces information or advantage, so it fades. Hierarchy settles quietly. This is why quiet people rarely have to stand up for themselves. The environment learns not to cross lines that are never theatrically defended. Boundaries that do not need reinforcement are the strongest ones. They exist because emotional access was never granted in the first place. Presence becomes lived behavior here. It is no longer something you do. It is something you are. Your posture, pace, tone, and timing align naturally. You don't think about being unreadable. You simply stop broadcasting. You don't try to intimidate. You stop reacting. And in that stillness, others find nothing to push against. This is the integration point. Quiet people are hard to challenge not because they dominate, but because they are unavailable to emotional leverage. And leverage is the only real entry point challenge requires. Remove access, and the challenge dissolves on its own. You are not becoming silent to hide. You are becoming silent to remain whole. Because what cannot be emotionally accessed cannot be challenged. Presence is not a tactic you apply. It is a state you inhabit. This is the final shift, from doing to being. From managing impressions to embodying stability, from trying to appear powerful to becoming the quiet reference point others unconsciously orient around. When presence is embodied, effort disappears. You are no longer persuading, signaling, or asserting. You are simply there, and that is enough. This is why presence replaces effort when it is embodied. Up to this point, you've seen how power is felt before it is explained, how silence creates gravity, how emotional stillness establishes hierarchy, and why unreadability prevents challenge. Now, those laws converge into identity, not a performance you turn on, but a baseline you return to. Presence becomes your default operating system. The psychological shift is subtle but permanent. You stop reaching outward for validation. You stop filling space to manage discomfort. You stop reacting to prove strength. Instead, you settle inward. Your nervous system slows. Your attention sharpens. Your movements become economical. And as this happens, the environment begins doing something remarkable. It adjusts to you. This is how dominant presence walks. Not fast, not rushed, not stiff, not performative. Dominant presence moves with measured pace. Steps are unhurried. Gestures are minimal and intentional. There is no excess motion, because there is no excess emotion. The body communicates that it is not being pulled by urgency. Others feel this immediately, and they slow down in response. This is how dominant presence pauses. Pauses are not gaps to be filled. They are decisions. When you pause before speaking, others lean in psychologically. They wait. They recalibrate. A pause signals that what comes next is not reactive. It is chosen. This alone elevates your words before they are spoken. This is how the dominant presence listens. Listening is not nodding. It is not agreeing. It is not mirroring. It is holding attention without yielding position. You listen without interruption, without facial overreaction, without telegraphing approval or disapproval. This makes others speak more carefully. They begin selecting words instead of spilling them. Listening, when done with stillness, disciplines the room. This is how dominant presence decides. Decisions are not announced with drama. They are stated simply, calmly, without justification, without emotional explanation. When your internal state is stable, decisions feel inevitable rather than debatable. People sense that your choices are not negotiable because they were not born from pressure. Silence becomes your default authority. Speech becomes a tool, not a reflex. You no longer speak to regulate emotion. You speak to convey direction. You speak to conclude, not to convince. This is why persuasion becomes unnecessary. Persuasion is effort spent compensating for lack of presence. When presence is embodied, people persuade themselves. They align. They defer. They adjust. Not because you asked them to, but because your stillness removed alternatives. Let's recap the laws that now live inside you. Power is detected before it is understood. What doesn't seek attention often controls it. The calmest nervous system sets the hierarchy. What cannot be emotionally accessed cannot be challenged. These are no longer ideas. They are behaviors. They are postures. They are pauses. They are decisions made without urgency and speech, delivered without excess. This identity repels manipulators automatically. Manipulators depend on movement, emotional hooks, rushed timelines, guilt, flattery, fear. Presence gives them nothing to work with. Around you, tactics fail quietly. They either withdraw, expose themselves, or adapt respectfully. All outcomes benefit you without confrontation. This identity attracts respect without request. People speak differently around you. Interruptions decrease. Explanations shortened. Testing fades. Not because you demanded it, but because your presence trained the environment how to behave. You did not negotiate hierarchy. You embodied it. And most importantly, this identity protects your inner world. You are no longer pulled into emotional storms that do not serve you. You observe before engaging. You respond instead of reacting. You conserve energy instead of leaking it. Presence creates internal peace and external authority at the same time, a rare combination that most people never achieve. Again and again, until presence becomes who you are. If this protocol showed you that presence ends testing without confrontation, tap like and hit subscribe, and comment this below. I embody quiet authority. Because when your nervous system stays still, the hierarchy locks in, and the room adjusts on its own.